Welcome, everyone. This is our September Mudroom, and the theme this time is change. But before we get rolling, I would like to give you a little AVA news. We have some things coming up that are really exciting. We are going to be doing our silent auction, which I think people thought maybe we were going to cancel since the gallery isn't having big openings, and so the silent auction will be online this year, and bidding opens September 18th through October 2nd. That's the in-person viewing where they can come in. They can come in. You can call and make an appointment, or just come during our gallery hours. It's going to be great. Right, and so if you aren't an online person, though, you can come on in, and then you can bid over the phone. And if somebody bids on something that you already bid on, we will call you and let you know so that you are in the process. Also, Tuesday, September 15th is our annual meeting, and that too is going to be online. So you can click online for that. That's on September 15th. And then an exciting event is September 26th through October 3rd. We're going to be doing Shadowing Alfred. Alfred was the art hound here at AVA for a while, and he died about a year and a half ago. We all loved him and missed him very much, and so people did art to do with animals, and so it's going to be on sale in the members gallery. You won't want to miss it. That's our AVA news. That opens the 26th of September and October 23rd. So, change. There's been a lot of change, way too much change lately. And I asked the storytellers, if you had one thing that you wouldn't want to change, wouldn't want to see changed, or wouldn't want to change, what would that be? Deena Frankel is our first storyteller. Deena said the thing she wouldn't want to see change is change. Good one. Deena is a freelance writer, editor, and designer by day, serving clients in Burlington, Vermont. She tells moth-style stories at venues around New England, including appearances at the Flynn Theater main stage and at Boston Women in Comedy Festival. She co-produces Storytelling Vermont, a monthly event in Burlington. Her dairy farmer father spun stories out of hay. She is following in his footsteps. Let's welcome Deena.
It sounds like there are 150 people in here. You guys are doing great. I did not mean to move to Tallahassee. After college, I got the perfect job working in the North Tower of the World Trade Center in Manhattan, and I just loved living in the city. This was a time before the city was gentrified the way it is today, and a lot of people were, the city was scary to them, but to me it was just a playground. Great clubs and places to explore and lots of friends. And so I never felt fear about living in the city. Just as I was thriving on this, my boss called me in one day and she dropped a bomb. She said that she was moving the company from the World Trade Center in Manhattan to Tallahassee, Florida. And if I wanted to keep my job, I was going to have to go too. And I needed that job. I had student loans to pay, so I reluctantly said yes, that I would go. Well, now I was a Connecticut Yankee. I had never been south of the Mason-Dixon line in my life. I wasn't absolutely sure the Civil War was actually over yet. So I went with some trepidation, and as I got to know the place, I realized it was not only the culture shock of suddenly living in the South, but it was also that I was living in a place where I didn't know anyone. I had no friends. Hard thing for a young person at that stage of their life. Luckily, my boss had gone to graduate school there, and now she lived with a woman who was a professor, at Florida State University. And so I had this kind of built-in group of friends who were their friends, and they were wonderfully warm and welcoming to me. They wanted me to like this place as much as they did. I thought of them as like my lesbian welcome wagon. But you know, I was a straight person, and I didn't, I didn't have very much. This was a new experience for me. I hadn't had a lot of lesbian friends in college, but they were the coolest women in town by far. And so, you know, it was just great to have this, this kind of warm welcome. I became friends in particular with a woman lawyer from this group. Her name was Betty Otis Stanton. Betty Otis was tall and gaunt and very androgynous. She wore a leather man on her belt at all times, to court, to the beach. She just had this kind of fuck you attitude that I just, you know, it appealed to me. She drove this old beat up VW microbus, and it was rusting out, and it was kind of held together by bumper strips that said things like, "Never straight, gaily forward," and "I'm a vaginitarian." So, and the biggest thing about her was that she gave great adventure. She took me to these places. It would have been years before I had seen them, like, you know, these pristine barrier islands off the Big Bend coast, and these like virgin stands of cypress deep in the national forest, and smoked mullet houses down on the Gulf. Just, you know, the magic of this part of the country. And I was actually beginning to think, wow, this place is different, but it's amazing, and maybe this could actually be home for me. And that was when a bad thing happened. Someone shot and killed a sheriff's deputy in Wakulla County, and the murderer was still at large. Betty Otis and I picked the wrong day to go to Apalachicola for oysters. Down the Crawfordville Highway, just outside of town, as you came to the Sop Choppy line, by the evangelical church with the portable sign out front that said, "Jesus comes quickly." Whoop, 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 the blue lights of Wakulla County's finest in the rear view. So the sheriff's deputy that gets out of this car is like right out of central casting, with the mirror shades and the red face and the shirt collar that's like 2 sizes too small. And he's coming up to the door of the driver's side, and she goes to open the door to talk to him, and he pulls his gun on her. And he's standing there. Sweat has popped out on his forehead, and his finger is twitching on the trigger of this gun. And I realized that he was scared of my gender-ambiguous hippie-mobile driving friend, and it was about to get her killed. I think it was that thing that happens where, you know, that reptilian part of our brains comes on, and it's like, all he could see was hippie pervert, and all we could see was boss hog, and this was pretty darn scary. So he gets her out of the car with her hands up, makes her walk around to the back, put her hands on the window, on the back window, while he goes and checks her driver's license and registration. And, you know, a few minutes later, he gets out of the cruiser, and he comes back to her, and I think he said this with no irony intended: "Have a nice day." So eventually, the murderer got caught. Betty Otis moved to Chicago, and she became a judge. And I spent 17 long years in what I think of as a foreign country. This was a place where Anita Bryant, the official spokesperson for Florida orange juice, crusaded against gay people as the devil, and 70 some odd percent of the citizens, of the voters, passed a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage during the time that I was there. And then finally, I found my home in Vermont. But when I read the news today, I think back to that time when my good friend was looking down the business end of a loaded gun. And it just reminds me that fear makes us a lot less human, and it can be deadly. Thank you.
Thank you, Deena. Our next storyteller, Marcy Bartlett, lives in Wilder with her husband and provides a home for challenged adults. Retired from catering, advertising sales, raising grandchildren, and suffers from extreme hunger when I can't hug people. So she's really suffering right now, I'm sure. So Marcy's going to tell us a great story about how change has affected shopping. But when I asked Marcy what she would like to never, ever have change, and that would be, and I hope I say this right, Marcy, to love God as you and your neighbor as you love yourself. So let's welcome Marcy.
What you can't see out there is they've put this very cushy egg crate thing on the floor, and I hate shoes, and so there. Yeah, the skin hunger, not just hunger, but skin hunger, because I really like people, and I can't hug my grandchildren. I can't smell them. If you've raised children and you love it, you just, that thing, you can't have it. So before I get into it, I have to tell you this thing about shopping is that I don't go shopping, I go hunting. I don't like shopping. I know what I need, I know what I want. If I find it, that's great. If I don't, I live without it until I can go back. And I throw out the circulars that come in the mail because I don't need them. If I want a steak, I'll go buy it. But shopping in person affords you the luxury of being a human being with other human beings. I really like that. So fast forward to the internet age, digital things, online shopping, and it's so sterile. And it's fraught with opportunities to screw it up. You live in Wilder, you get your mail at the post office, but oh no, we don't deliver to P.O. boxes. Don't get me started. But as the pandemic was ramping up, I realized that my laptop was breathing its last. And I thought, okay, social distancing, I love them, but not that much. And I was going to need some sort of outside contact if I was going to navigate the near new future we were about to live with. But after just in-person shopping and before digital shopping, did you know that there was this thing called the Sears Roebuck catalog? They stopped printing it in 1993. As an aside, I remember that catalog thinking, I gotta save this. It's gonna be worth something someday. I actually went online today and learned that people are bidding on them online. You can get one for $38 right now, just the catalog. Can't buy anything out of it, but you can have that. And I really don't care. But when the first thing to run out was toilet paper, there's still a use for that catalog. And if you're my age, you will understand what I mean. You just shred the paper. Okay, so the laptop thing. You need the laptop to order the laptop. Didn't have the laptop. Had my cell phone, which had the internet. But the print is really small, and I have good eyesight, but not that good. And it began to get pretty dicey on March 23rd when Governor Scott was closing the border. I thought, this is like going into Siberia. Do I need papers? So anyway, I ended up buying the laptop online at the last minute when I finally knew what I wanted. There were 3 left at Best Buy of the type I needed. Used my husband's computer to order it, but then you can't go in the store. There's no Geek Squad. And so I sat out in the parking lot. They brought me this box, and for $3,000, you would think that the box should be at least a little bigger, or some sort of fortune cookies or soy sauce or something with my takeout, because you can't go in the building. But they will bring you your thing, and they put it in the back of my Odyssey, you know, lift, put it down, hand me the papers, and then they leave, and then washed their hands. I might have something, you know. All right, so got the laptop. And so we hunkered down. But I'm old enough to remember shopping with Sears catalog, and I did order what were called Venetian blinds. Anybody remember those? They've been replaced with mini blinds, which are equally as ugly. But they, when I went to pick them up, they had garden hoses and said that that's what I had ordered. No. I'm not going to hang those on my windows. I'm sorry. So anyway, this is what shopping through an impersonal vehicle feels like to those of us who like human contact. And so shopping online, I got the laptop, but there are other things I needed to buy. And there are certain things in life you should buy in person, like bras and other things. So the stores were closed. And when they began to open, I thought, great, I'll go in and get some bras. Well, at Kmart, one time I took a photo of the ladies' lingerie section, sent it to my sisters, and said, this is where ugly bras go to die, because they were bad. But they had over there on the wall a very small section of stuff I would countenance wearing. And so my solution is to buy 6 or 8 of the same thing to avoid having to go back to the store again. I'm fine with that, except they didn't have my stuff. The store's open. I got, in there, can't do it, so I go to order them online. I knew exactly what I wanted, found them on their website, and ordered them. You know the story about the fisherman who always lies about the fish he caught? In reality, it's like this big, but he wants to make you think it's this big. They were this big in real life. I said, no. Big, but not that big. And so you have to go through the whole return thing. I thought, I'll return them to Kmart, because they say you can, but not today, because they're shutting that Kmart down. They don't do returns. So I went to try to get the return label printed. Can't return, can't get the label. And I was commiserating with my sibs about this, and one sister said she had ordered an ironing board online, and they mailed her 2. Now, I've told her that there's medication for ironing. It's really not needed. But to get 2? How do you return that? I don't get it. What do you do? Post the label on the top? So anyway, having to return these was more complicated than ever. they assured me they had sent me the right size, and I felt like saying, no, I don't think so. And I thought, it's like the slingshot heard around the world. Or maybe it's a table runner for your dining room. You know, you can, a little speed bump thing in the middle, you just iron out the bumps. No. So I had to go to UPS. I was really looking forward to that because they open at 6 o'clock at night. And it's not like I return things like this to strangers in sort of remote locations. And thank God there was a woman. And then there was another woman, and we started gabbing about war stories of buying ladies' things and what it's like and how the guys don't get it. And they laughed at me, and I said, I can't print the label online because their website is broken, as far as I'm concerned, has a bad attitude, it's broken. So this woman, God bless the woman who can do it, she figured it out. She said, hold on, pushed a bunch of buttons, printed out the label. I handed her my Ziploc bag and said, here, just thank you, thank you, thank you very much. So in the meantime, Kmart was trying to tell me that they would, you know, send me the right ones, refund my money, wouldn't print me a label. That's not going to happen. So I ended up sending them back through UPS, this lady who was a love and helped me. And I've gotten credit for one. And somewhere out there, there's an ironing board with the other one. I think it's like cloud computing. I think it's like a holding pattern at JFK. I think that they just, and eventually they all just come down to land. It's, you know, you better duck. But I don't like online shopping. I do it, but I really like people, and I really want to hug somebody, so watch out.
Well, our next storyteller is one of our favorites, Kevin Gallagher. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself after I tell them what your answer to your question was. When I asked Kevin what he would like not to ever change, it is, he's 60 years old. You'd never believe it, I mean, seriously. But he still doesn't have to get up in the middle of the night and pee. He can go all night, he doesn't have to get up, he doesn't have to pee, and he never ever wants that to change. And he is going to tell us a very funny story about the simple haircut. You know what a change that can be. And Kevin, please do tell a little bit about yourself, though, and I really apologize for that. I can't find it on my phone.
You are fine, Sally. You are fine. Yes, I am the envy of my doctor who's younger than me because I'm at that age now that everyone is younger than me in healthcare. So I want to tell you a story where I took a deep breath, but I actually really wanted to throw up. I've always been at odds with my hair. I know it's a really strange thing, which is why I wear it short now. But I can tell you that I was a fairly cute kid when I was young, according to pictures and my own personal opinion. But when puberty came, puberty had a whole different idea of what I was going to look like in adulthood. And one of the ways that it co-opted me was my hair. I would say that my hair sort of became something like a topiary that maybe Edward Scissorhands would have loved to get his scissors into. So think a skinny kid with big hair, think Q-tip actually would be a pretty good idea. So I was pretty insecure in high school and college for way more reasons than my hair, but my hair did not really help me with my insecurity. So the end of high school, beginning of college, I had a nice afro that sort of went shoulder to shoulder, moved when I walked, pick in the back. It rivaled Lincoln Hayes from the Mod Squad. Then as punk sort of came into fashion, I sort of went with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Grace Jones look, like tall, flat top, think Marge Simpson maybe, if you don't know Grace Jones. And then I kind of moved to the to the Sinead O'Connor, just like wear it really, really, really short. But eventually I decided on this, short hair with a little kickstand in the front. So a long time ago, I used to have my partner, Michael, cut my hair because it sort of seemed like a good thing to do in a relationship. But eventually we had to stop because there were years of fighting over this. He tended to call me controlling and difficult. I sort of thought of myself more as helpful and instructive. But needless to say, in order to save my relationship, I started going to a salon to get my hair cut. But after years of paying $25 for what is approximately about 15 minutes of work, I thought I could actually go to a barbershop. And so I found a barbershop in my neighborhood. It was close. It was $10 score, and it was open on Saturdays. So I went in on a Saturday morning, and it was such an invitation back to my childhood. You know, I walked in, 3 guys with white coats, 3 chairs, whole wall of men and boys, you know, sitting, not talking, because that's what straight people do. Straight men do. They just sit and they don't talk to each other. And so, you know, looking around, you know, the talcum powder on the floor, the smells, the smells of the blue barbicide in the jars with the combs in them. Don't even know if that stuff works. And then there's the aqua velva, I never know what that stuff is. Aqua vulva, aqua velvida. Yeah. So lots of things. And so I had brought a picture of Brad Pitt that had a haircut that I thought could kind of look good on me to show the barber. And I was really glad that I did, because the only magazines they had there were Field and Stream, Guns and Ammo, and Sports Illustrated. So I sit down. For those of you who don't go to barbershops, it's kind of first come, first serve, but no one says anything. You just have to like notice your place in the world. And so I sit down, and it's my turn, raise my hand. So the barber is sitting with like one cheek on the stool behind his chair, and he tosses me the smock. And I thought, oh, so this is the difference between a $10 haircut and a $25 haircut. I have to put on my own smock. So I put on my smock and I sit down, and I decided to not show him the Brad Pitt picture because it seemed really too gay even for me to sort of, yeah, it was too crowded and too gay. And so I just kind of tucked that away, and I said I would just like a trim, please. So he fires up the clippers, and he's, and then he says, oddly, turn your head. So I turn my head, and then he said, turn to the other side. And I thought, oh my God, like, you lazy bastard. Like, you're not even going to get off that stool. It's not like walking around my head is that much, you know, acreage to move around. So I turn my head. Then he spins the chair around, and he says, bend down. So down I go so that he can buzz the top. And it was at that point that I sort of realized that I think he had had a stroke, because there was like half of his body just wasn't really moving. And of course I felt horrible, because here I was being really judgmental and critical of him. And here he is trying to like work to support his family. So like, what a jerk am I? So he finishes buzzing the top of my head. I sit up, he spins the chair around. I look in the mirror, and oh my God, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It looked like someone had mowed their lawn with a push mower in the middle of the night, drunk. Like, there were tufts of hair on this side. I was shaved down to the skull. On this side, I was bleeding over my right ear. The top, I can't even tell you. I mean, if you want an image, like, just think mange. Like, basically, I looked like I had mange. And I thought, in that moment, I have worked so hard to have some sort of normal haircut that doesn't make me feel really insecure and vulnerable my whole life. And I finally found one. And in 2 minutes, this guy had shorn the whole thing off. Well, I gave him $15, you know, because I'm Catholic. And so I have a lot of Catholic guilt. And I thought $5 might get me a couple of days out of purgatory. But there are so many other reasons why I'm going to purgatory for a long time. I'm not even quite sure it makes a difference. But I ran out of the barbershop to my car, wishing to God that I was Grace Kelly, because Grace Kelly always had sunglasses and a kerchief with her. And I get home just after Michael had gotten back from grocery shopping, and he said, "Oh my God, what happened to you? Did you do that to yourself?" And I said, yeah, Michael, that's what I do. When you're not here for some strange reason, I do things like self-harm in the form of giving myself bad haircuts. I'm like, no, I did not do this myself. So I called the salon that I used to go to, and I said, "Hi, do you have any emergency appointments?" And they're like, "Well, we're not like an ER. Like, what's an emergency appointment?" You will see what one looks like when I get there. So I walk in, and my stylist said, "Jesus Christ, what the hell happened to you? Did you do this to yourself?" And I thought, why are people asking this question all the time? Like, no one would ever do this to themselves. So I sat there. I got a very, very close crop is the word they use, close crop haircut. Think kind of second grader in a public school after a lice infestation. And I promised him that I would never change stylist again. But then COVID came. And so what do? So I kind of went back to Michael. So now when Michael cuts my hair, this is 2 weeks ago, I sit very quietly. I don't say anything. I occasionally say ouch when the blood is either running down my face or my neck, because he kind of digs the clippers into my skull. And I thought, you know, it's been 40 years since I've had an afro. Like it could be last week for all I know, because I don't know if I'm ever going to be comfortable enough with myself that I won't care about stupid things like hair. And given that I'm 60, I sort of feel like that might never happen. Thank you. Oh, I'm supposed to say something about myself. You know, you already know enough about me. Say something about yourself. I feel terrible. I am a psychotherapist. I am a psychotherapist, and I listen to other people's stories for a living, and then occasionally I get an opportunity to be the storyteller.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will see you back in 5. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Our next storyteller is Jennifer Rickards. Jennifer tells stories and writes occasional poetry and prose. She has a storytelling project called 3x5, in which she collects true stories on an index card and shares them on the web, Facebook, and Instagram. By day, she is a deputy director of the Montshire Museum of Science. When I asked Jennifer what she wouldn't want to see change, she said something that I love: the power of words. Okay, Jennifer.
When I was a sophomore in high school, I made a new friend. We'll call her Pam. And this was very convenient for me because I needed someone to sit with at lunchtime and someone to chat with in the mornings before the bell rang, so I didn't have to carefully rearrange my locker for the 100th time, killing time until that bell rang. And this was convenient for Pam as well, because she had the misguided notion that I was one of the popular kids at school and that she was going to have access to some new social circle. And I did have to pop that bubble for her rather quickly. Nevertheless, we started spending a lot of time together and, you know, doing the same kinds of things that our peers were doing. We went to the mall, we went to the movies, we went running. We actually watched movies at her house. This was a dramatic, novel change in our lives. Her family was the first one that I knew to get a Betamax video player, so we could actually watch movies in her basement rec room. We got to know each other's families pretty well, too, sometimes by having sleepovers at each other's homes. And when I would stay over at her house, we'd wake up in the morning and her mother would make a pot of coffee and sit at the kitchen table and smoke cigarettes and tell long and elaborate stories of her clients at work. And Pam's father was kind of a joker. He liked to make us laugh. And in particular, when I was there, he seemed to like to tell a lot of racist jokes because he knew it was a way to get a rise out of me. Pam would sort of laugh it off and kind of brush it aside. He didn't mean it, you know, he was just having fun with me. And he was my friend's father, after all. Time went on, and we were in our senior year and getting ready to go off to college, going off to, you know, in separate directions. And I do remember her telling me that in the midst of doing all the paperwork to get ready to go, her school asked her how she would feel about having a roommate who was Black. And she said no, she would not be comfortable with that. So we did go our separate ways that fall, and for a while kept in touch with letters, the kind with stamps and envelopes and pen and paper. And her letters were full of stories about new friends and drunken escapades. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said my stories definitely didn't have any of that either. But I did find something different when I went to school. I mean, the moment I stepped foot on campus, there were conversations about the importance of diversity and the value of having different voices, different perspectives, people of different backgrounds around us all. And for the first time, I think, I knew these were my values, but somehow this experience really helped me to articulate them and solidify them in ways that were new and different. And I made such wonderful friends who shared these values with me. And you know, we were different from different backgrounds, but we had something that was shared. And I learned a great deal new about what friendship could be. And many of these friends are still my closest friends today, many decades since. So Pam and I did lose touch over that first year, and but we were both headed home for the summer, and we were going to be working and living in our family homes, and we did reconnect and decided to make a plan to get together and have lunch, and I was a little apprehensive about this, but we were going to move forward and see how it went. And she came to pick me up in her little cute white pickup truck that she always drove. And I don't think we were out of my driveway before she used a racial slur to refer to two men who came into the video store where she was working for the summer. And I don't recall exactly what I said to her, but she knew I was upset and backtracked and apologized. What I didn't say was, you know, take me home. I don't want to go through with this. We went, we had lunch. It was a stilted conversation for an hour or two, and then she took me back home. And that was the last time we saw each other or spoke to one another since. So today, of course, if you want to know how someone kind of turns out, you can go on Facebook and pretty much learn everything you need to know. And of course, I've done that. And it looks like Pam is having a perfectly nice life. She looks happy. And I really do wish her the best. And I hope that she's had a chance to learn and grow in this time since. We all have. And interestingly, about 2 weeks ago, the high school that we attended, which for many decades had used this racist icon of the Unionville Indians as its mascot, just finally voted to cast off that mascot. So it does give me hope that all of us, individuals and institutions, do have the capacity to learn and grow, even if it takes a lot longer than it should. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next storyteller is Carly Wynn. And Carly, I don't have your bio either, so that's awful. And I would like you to say a few words about yourself, if you would, before your story. That would be great. When I asked Carly what she would never like to see changed, it was how picture perfect, how the postcards, how Vermont looks just like the postcards this time of year. She wouldn't like to see that change. So Carly, please say a few words about yourself and tell your story, and I apologize.
Thank you. My name is Carly. I am a semi-pro Nordic skier, a semi-nomadic adventurer, and a coach. And I write about my adventures on my website and blog, carlyoutside.com. All right, so I was in the desert. My knees were in the pink dirt. I was having a conversation with the sky, with the mountains. Where do I go from here? What do I do next? I wasn't crying, but there was tension. I heard a voice inside my head telling me, go home. I argued with the voice. I have no home. This was a turning point for me in a 5-year journey of wandering, of looking for home. This had started for me at the Lodge, a 75-year-old log building in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. The lodge was unheated. The walls leaked. They let the wind in. The floors slanted as though they wanted to keep me in the building. It was unheated except for a giant stone fireplace that seemed to suck all of the warmth out of the main room. It smelled like an old forest, and it was my home. This was a building that deeply belonged in its landscape, and it taught me how to belong too. I learned about its intricacies. I knew just how much the floor was slanting each year because I was the one that kept sanding off the doors so that they would swing freely over the floor. I learned to communicate with this living building, establishing a relationship with it. I needed it, but it needed me too. Unfortunately, it needed more than what I could provide. Log buildings of this age and size need quite a bit of maintenance, and the lodge hadn't been receiving the maintenance that it needed. Usage was going up, and the decision was made that a new building was necessary, a bigger building with fewer quirks. I went to all of the meetings. I gave my feedback when it was invited and when it was unsolicited. But ultimately, I lost the lodge to the societal machine I came to refer to as the more, better, faster machine. The lodge's deconstruction was my uprooting. I could have stayed, but why would I? So I embarked. I embarked on a new journey to find my new home. I traveled to new mountainside huts, mountaintop huts. I traveled to tree houses and jungles, I lived in cars. I lived in a ski resort side chalet, and the changes just kept passing by my windows. I was committed to this life of change, looking for something new, looking for something that I wanted to stay with. I never really found a reason to stay, though. I continued to find reasons to leave, lots of reasons to go, the more I explored. One time I was living in my own car in the high deserts of Oregon, and I got smoked out by wildfires in my own car, just continuing to find more reasons to keep going on, keep finding the next thing. Then one winter I found myself in a log cabin just west of the Tetons in Idaho. It was the middle of February. It was cold. I had skied to the cabin. And it was there that I realized that I wasn't wandering looking for a home anymore. I was wandering because I had no home. I needed a new type of change, and that was exactly what fate had in store for me. It was on the eve of a 2-month trip to Europe that I got the news that the airline I had been scheduled to fly on had gone out of business. I had no alternative plans. I was living in a van, not even my own van. This is when I found myself on my knees in the dirt, having this conversation with the sky, with the mountains. Where do I go? What do I do? Go home, go home. I have no home. This your mountain, I heard the voice say. And so I went back to my mountain and to the new lodge. It doesn't smell like an old forest. The walls don't leak. But some of the doors don't latch very well, and some of the logs still sort of look like trees. It still watches the mountain. And so I stayed there to work for a season. When the season was over, I stayed in New England for another 8 months. And though I had plans to leave, the pandemic hit, and I continued to stay. As the pandemic changes everything else, my surroundings are staying the same for the first time in years. And so I face a question. Is home a thing that I must travel to find? What roots might I grow if I stayed? Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Our last storyteller is Arielle, and she is a writer, photographer. She is learning as she goes and writing one-liners in a tiny sunlit room in Brooklyn. Her writing has been published on Literary North and Entropy Magazine, and you can find more of her work on her website, ariellemcmanus.com. I just wanted the answer to your question. The thing she wouldn't like to see change is the taste of strawberries.
My mom only knows military time. It might be because she grew up in Sweden, though by now she's lived here much longer than she ever lived there. Regardless, she still gets her 12 a.m.s and her 12 p.m.s confused. Our flight to Sweden, for example, was scheduled for 12 a.m. We were flying in to go to the funeral of my grandpa, her father. I called her at 9 p.m. and I asked her, "Have you left yet?" And she said, "Left for where?" And I said, her confusion confused me. I had to even look it up on Google. Is 12 a.m. the night one or the day one, just to be sure? It might have been as simple as her just losing track of time, but it also might have been grief-induced forgetfulness. The idea of when a person's brain is just so involved in the healing of emotional trauma that they can't even focus on the most simple of tasks. Kind of like the day where I found out my grandpa died while I was at work, and I had to go to the stairwell to go cry. And when I came back, I had to check my face in my phone camera to make sure I looked okay, and I couldn't even remember what my own face looked like. Once we got to Sweden, my mom made my grandma go through all of her belongings, wanted her to clean out everything, get rid of anything she didn't use, anything she didn't need. And once we had gotten everything sorted out, we took my grandpa's old Volvo, the kind with the seats in the back that face outwards, and we drove to a recycling center a few towns away. The car is so old it doesn't even take CDs, just cassettes. So I picked a cassette at random, not really caring what would be on it, just not wanting to sit in silence. A song that I had never heard came on, Tall Trees in Georgia. It goes, tall trees in Georgia, they grow so high, they shade me so. And Eva Cassidy sings so softly, so beautifully. It's the kind of song that makes you wish you could sing too. We were the only car on the road, winding through the roads under a sea of snow-dusted pine trees. And in that moment, with that song, everything just felt so right, even though everything was, without a doubt, all wrong. That song, a song my grandpa clearly loved so dearly that he recorded it onto that cassette tape. The smell of the pine trees, the snow, the light at dusk. I wished that I could bottle it all. Also, in the days leading up to his funeral, I was surprised to find that there could be moments of any kind of lightness and of levity. On one of the nights we were cleaning out my grandma's things, we were all sitting on the bedroom floor, me, my mom, and my grandma came across a royal blue gown of hers, the dress that she wore to my mom's wedding. And they had me put the dress on, and my mom went to go find a pair of earrings for me to wear with the dress. And she went to go find a pair of matching earrings, and she found my grandma didn't own a single pair of matching earrings. There was a pearl stud, there was a cascade of rhinestones, there was one small gold hoop, but nothing had a pair. And my mom and I started laughing at my grandma, saying, "Why don't you have any matching earrings?" She said, "At least the earrings I'm wearing right now match." And we said, "No, they don't. You're not wearing matching earrings." And she took them out of her ears and she just held them in her hands and stared at them. And then she just burst out laughing at the idea that this whole time she had been walking around in mismatching earrings. And she was laughing so hard, she started crying. My mom was laughing so hard, she had to leave the room. And I was laughing so hard, I was keeled over, nearly in a fetal position. It was kind of like the night that we had to put down the family cat 3 years back. And that night, we all sat on the couch in the living room in front of the TV, and we watched a movie so funny it knocked the breath out of us. It was just shocking to me that in moments of such grief, it could feel possible to feel anything even remotely close to happiness. Finally, on the day of the funeral, I sat in a front pew in a slant of colored light coming in through one of the stained glass windows. And when it was my turn to eulogize him, I stood up at the front and I talked about how there was no occasion too small for him to break out the good bottle of whiskey, how he had a laugh like a crack of summer thunder. I cried so hard I could barely breathe. I blew my nose into the sleeve of my turtleneck because I hadn't thought to bring tissues. Why hadn't anyone thought to bring tissues? And at that moment, as I stood up there, so upset, I thought back to that night, all of us sitting on that bedroom floor laughing ourselves silly, and I thought, that is how we would have wanted it to be. Thank you.
I want to thank all the storytellers for participating here at the Mudroom. It's been a pleasure to have you. And our next Mudroom is December 17th, and the theme is going to be Best Present Ever. You can take that however you want, so it doesn't have to be a Christmas or Hanukkah or, the best present ever. Thank you all very much.